Hello, my name is David Tallpine, Kuwas Quinunkusu from the Chibangangma Band of Nipmuc Indians, Tribal Council. Here today to speak with you about some of the history in this area from the prairie town known as Mugunkwag, known as Hopkinton area now. Hoping to open up a little bit of awareness and history to the people that live in this area about some of the things that happened to my ancestors here not longer than much over 300 years ago. So we're here to talk about the August 30th anniversary of the state of Massachusetts making the law that required all Native Americans living in this area to be interned to these what they call praying towns, which are basically concentration camps for Native Americans, in which they were later removed from those camps over to Natick, and from there transported out to Deer Island, where many of them, men, women, and children, died with no resources or food or shelter or anything like that a long time ago. So we're trying to raise awareness about that, and also just trying to let people know, the present status of Deer Island and the story behind it as well, because not many people seem to know anything about the story. It seems to be one of those hidden truths from the history of America. We believe that it's an instrumental part that people should know about the history here living in this state, and that our people are still here, and we have been here ever since. We're the remnants of the people that lost their lives over there. So we're just hoping to educate a little bit and hopefully get some justice out there in the Deer Island area, because they have that wastewater treatment plant out there now. They've desecrated the remains of my ancestors, and also they also have I believe a dog walking area where it's where the pets are allowed to defecate on the grounds where my ancestors are buried. And we're just hoping to get that awareness out there in hopes that we might get some support behind us. And as they say, knowledge is power, so we're hoping to educate people on that aspect as well.
Are the grave sites properly marked?
No, the grave sites are not properly marked. They were buried there a long time ago by their own people, many of them, and then of course they were dug up and moved to we don't know where. We have some ideas of where those remains were sent. Of course, we have nothing to back that up because that evidence was hidden from the public and our people as well. So they're not marked, but we're currently trying to get a memorial erected out there and having some justice given to those who lost their lives there.
How can you define where those remains are today? Is there some action being taken?
Oh, there's been action being taken on that issue of defining where those graves are. Of course, out there at Deer Island, I don't know if you've been there recently, but it's quite industrialized, and it doesn't look the way that it did a long time ago. We don't really know exactly where those remains might be right now. All we're looking for is the state to recognize the atrocities committed against our people, and recognizing the mistakes they made, and honoring the grave sites that are still there, and leaving them be, and just stop what they're doing out there, and providing some type of memorial where we can have a peaceful place to go and have those ancestors respected and honored.
And who would fund the memorial?
Well, we think the state should fund the memorial, of course, because they were the ones that desecrated the lands to begin with, and they were the ones that created the law that interned our people there to begin with. So we feel the state should fund that, and it's not like it's a huge thing we're looking for. But we also wish that the state would recognize the ancient confederacy and the ancient governments we had here, and let us decide for ourselves what we choose to have there, and not have any other entities involved in that.
Are the people still living there, or is it solely for wastewater?
No, there's no one living there. It's used as there is a state park, I believe, out there where you can walk. We have had ceremonies out there in honor of the old ones that passed there, but the bigger part of the island is used for the wastewater treatment plant.
Why were people interned there?
Why were people interned there? Well, there's many many reasons why. The political interest of the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the commercial interest basically were a big part of that, I think, and Native Americans were in the way of that because they had to find some way to get our people off of our land. So with the beginning of the King Philip War, all the relations that had been built through the years, many of them positive, were not honored, and many of our people were known to get along quite well with the English people as far as the residents. Unfortunately, the government manipulated both, not only tribal people, but the colonial people as well, into forcing that conflict against one another, moving into lands that they hadn't agreed to share, or forcing laws on them that were not part of their own tribal law, were a big part of that, and also forcing a religion on us that was not our own, like Christianity, which was one of the goals of these praying towns to begin with, was to convert our people to a different way, because they felt that our way was not a godly way, or it was a way of devil worship and those types of things. So a lot of things led up to that, and there are some specific instances that happened, but I think collectively as a whole, there was a lot involved in the start of that war. I think people were just beginning to, natives didn't really understand, of course, the concept of land ownership. And when certain treaties possibly were signed by a few natives to share the land, it wasn't that we were giving the land away and never allowed access to it. It's just that we don't feel that any land can be owned. It doesn't belong to anybody. Therefore, it's not ours to give away at the same time. But when our people realized that the goals of the colonists were to sweep us from our land and not allow us to use it in the traditional ways we had for thousands of years, that's when the conflict started to arise, and the anger started to escalate here in this area. And we feel that a lot of the aspects of that time need to be told about, and it's a pivotal part in American history as a whole, as a country, and it's not something that a lot of people know about. And for a long time, our people remained quiet because it wasn't healthy to raise their voice about these such things. People weren't willing to listen at those times. But recently, people have had more interest in history and want to really know what happened here. And there's documentation to back that up. It just takes a little work to find it, and we're providing some of that as well.
And where did the natives go that were interned on Deer Island? Where did they eventually end up?
They ended up, they died. They were sent out there in the dead of winter with no shelter, food, or resources to survive.
How many?
Thousands. Thousands.
Not one survived?
Well, there were some that came off of Deer Island that did come back in hopes of finding their families and those types of things, but for the most part, thousands of people just died there. They never returned.